The biggest asset that most people own is their house. You set up your overseas company or your local company, you have a debt owed to that company of £1 million, for example, put a charge on the land registry for that amount. And that means nobody can touch your property, which, as I say, for many people, it's the most important asset.
It applies to absolutely everyone, this property tip. It's, infinitely scalable because everyone has property, and the value of property can be, Beverly Hills in the hundreds of millions or whatever, but it's also, something that everyone has. And that's why I would say that if anyone has a better tip and they put it in the comments, I think we're comfortable paying someone $100 or whatever, or $1,000, because I can't see a better tip which is covering such a broad range and infinitely scalable. I was going through YouTube and watching one of your old interviews with Craig Campbell, and obviously did quite 125,000 views, and you can see what people were most interested in here. There's a massive spike, and it's not even to do with the range of stuff or the no money down deal. It was to do with probably one of the most epic finance tips I've heard: putting a third party charge on a property that you own to protect yourself from any legal problems and anyone else trying to put a charge on. I can't take credit for that. That's a tip you've given, and elaborate on that a bit.
Look, the biggest asset that most people own is their house, and most people have either they have no mortgage on it or they have equity in their house. They have a mortgage and the property's worth a lot more than the outstanding mortgage, and that's an asset that can easily be attacked if you've got creditors coming after you, if you've got the government coming after you, if you're involved in divorce. There's all sorts of reasons why people get sued. And if they've got hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds or dollars worth of equity in their house, that's the first target. It's an easy target. You can't move it. You can't take your house to another location. So how do you protect that asset? So in my view, a prudent thing to do is to make sure that there's never any equity in your property, that you can set up a charge from, you can set up a company. It could be an offshore company, it can be a local company, and that company, you can owe that company money, and you can give that company security over your own property, so that if anybody looks at it, you may have one mortgage with a bank, you have a second mortgage with your own company, or if you have no mortgage, you just have a security to your own company. Obviously, the debt has to be legitimate, but that's something that you may need a bit of creativity to do that. Set up your overseas company or your local company. You have a debt owed to that company of £1 million, for example, and you put a charge on the land registry for that amount, and that means, and you have to have set various agreements and so on, but that means that nobody can touch your property, which, as I say, for many people, it's the most important asset.
And those agreements are basically, some people would say they're with yourself, but a trust is an independent party that can represent a body of people. So if you're doing it with a trust, a friendly trust or a friendly third party, then it's totally fair game.
Many legitimate reasons that you may do that. For example, if you have a business and you are putting, most of us at one time or another have put our own money into businesses. Quite often we don't document it because we're kind of thinking, it's with ourselves, but it's actually not. It's with a different legal entity. It's with your company. So if you lend money to your company or even provide services to your company that you're not paid for, that's a legitimate debt that your company owes you. So any debt can be secured if you decide to give security. If you go to a bank and borrow money for your company, they'll quite often ask for a personal guarantee. There's no reason why you can't do the same thing with your own company and make sure that what your company owes you secured, and you give your property as security for that debt. So it's perfectly legitimate, and just because it's closely connected doesn't mean that it's not a perfectly legitimate thing to do.
And those little tips there that you gave in terms of creative ways to do it, but legitimate ways, I think we're giving people enough information to do it themselves, but clearly we can help people who want to do that, like with the product that we're going to try and start with, setting up LLCs abroad for people in the UK, but also maybe people in the US, LTDs in the UK or Hong Kong. So
it's always worth having these, having at least some of your assets outside your home jurisdiction. So if you're in the US, you said you can use a Hong Kong company, or you can use a UK LLP or an Irish company. There are many options, and yes, it might be worth talking to some third parties to help you get that structure set up, because it's very important that you get it right. So we don't broadcast our services that we offer to people very loudly, but it's something that we can help with.
Yeah, and that also helps potentially with this amazing property tip, because that third party could be a company that you start to build abroad, which only helps that for that extra layer of protection.
It's also much more difficult if you've got an overseas company, you've got some money and assets in an overseas company. It's much more difficult for someone coming after you in your home jurisdiction to get access to those assets that you have overseas. So it's something that really anyone with any, even someone with modest wealth, should be looking at that, because if you are living, particularly in a country like the UK, where you've got this horrible socialist government and rising tax rates and all sorts of problems, do you really want to have all your assets in that jurisdiction? I would say that's a high-risk strategy.
It applies to absolutely everyone, this property tip. It's, infinitely scalable because everyone has property, and the value of property can be, Beverly Hills in the hundreds of millions or whatever. But it's also, something that everyone has, and that's why I would say that if anyone has a better tip and they put it in the comments, I think we're comfortable paying someone $100 or whatever, or $1,000, because I can't see a better tip which is covering such a broad range and infinitely scalable. So
for sure, I'd love to hear any asset protection tips. Yeah, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and Hector's going to give you $100 or maybe even $1,000. So go for it.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and join our Discord chat room linked in the description so you can see these plays and get in these opportunities when we do.
In the modern world, great leaders resolve their conflicts with words.
As for me, I like the stock.
Order filled.